Since 1985, Chicago's Midway International Airport has been Southwest Airlines' primary gateway to the city of Chicago. Midway has always been one of Southwest's largest hubs and continues to be exactly that. But on February 14, 2021, Southwest decided to amp things up and start flying out of the bigger, busier, and better Chicago airport, O'Hare. Many frequent travelers from O'Hare, like myself, were excited to finally see Southwest begin service there. Unfortunately, soon after Southwest launched flights to O'Hare, it became apparent that they might have chosen a bad time to start serving the airport. Southwest is one of the largest airlines in the world and one that shows no mercy when it comes to expanding its route network. So when you take an airline like that and throw it into an already congested and space-restricted airport like O'Hare, do you really think that's going to work out? In today's video, I'm flying Southwest from Dallas Love Field, Dallas's secondary airport, back to O'Hare. What should have been a nice and quick 2 hours on the plane turned into, well, a little more than 2 hours, let's just say that. Anyway, I hope you'll enjoy the video and hopefully you'll get an idea of just how bad the Southwest situation at O'Hare really is. So that way you can judge for yourself if you really want to fly them from here or instead just drive an extra 30 minutes to Midway. Dallas Love Field is a pretty small airport and thus is very easy to navigate. I had checked in online, so once I got to the airport it was straight to the security checkpoint and I was through in about 15 minutes. Love Field's terminal is pretty stacked with lots of retail and food options. I especially like just how much natural light the terminal gets as well. It's no surprise that Southwest is the main airline at Love Field, but you also have other carriers like Delta and Alaska with a handful of daily flights here, and also JSX who operate from the private jet area of the airport. Today I'm on board Southwest Flight 28 to Chicago O'Hare. Now, even though I've been flying from Chicago for over 15 years now, O'Hare has always just been the more convenient airport, and that's actually why I've never, to my knowledge at least, flown from Midway, mainly because there was no point unless you absolutely wanted to fly Southwest, which I never had a reason to do so. But now that Southwest flies to O'Hare, that gave travelers more options, and last year that finally gave me the chance to fly them for the first time. And speaking of first times, new travelers on Southwest will definitely find their boarding process unusual, because I definitely did. Basically, Southwest assigns you a number 1 through 60 across 3 different boarding groups, A, B, or C. Your boarding group and number are assigned based on how early you check in. So for example, the first 60 people to check in for a flight will be assigned Group A, and then the numbers 1 through 60 based on who was first, second, third, etc. This process then repeats for Groups B and C. When boarding time approaches, Group A lines up first, and each passenger has to stand by whichever pylon has their group number included. So for example, if I was assigned to position A51, I would be standing right about here. It's a really unique and weird boarding process, and I really don't know what to think of it. Something else that makes Southwest unique from everyone else are the itineraries they offer. Most airlines will operate one flight number for one specific route, but Southwest does things differently in that they'll operate one flight number for multiple flight segments operated by the same plane. For example, today we're on board Flight 28, which doesn't solely operate between Dallas and Chicago. It actually starts in Tampa flying to Houston Hobby. From Houston it comes to Dallas, and then from Dallas it goes to Chicago. These 3 segments are all operated by one aircraft, and in many cases there are actually people on board who stay on board for all 3 segments. So theoretically you could book a flight from Tampa to Chicago, but if you don't pay attention to the itinerary, instead of getting a non-stop flight, you could very well book an itinerary that has you stopping in Houston, then Dallas, then finally Chicago. Southwest is the world's largest operator of the Boeing 737 family. Our aircraft today is a 737-700, of which Southwest is also the world's largest operator with over 400 examples in the fleet. Southwest only offers economy class seating on their planes, and the 737-700s are fitted with 143 seats. Southwest is also unique in that you can't reserve a seat in advance. It's actually open seating, so once you get on board, you can basically choose wherever you want to sit. I chose seat 21F towards the back today, and all of the seats are basically the same. This 737 has the older seats with no actual headrest, but still pretty decent padding. The seats also come with a standard extendable tray table and seat pocket with the usual in-flight literature. The legroom is decent, it's like 31 inches, so nothing too bad, although if you're over 6 feet tall, it definitely will feel a bit cramped. Above your seat are the passenger service units, which house reading lights, air vents, and the flight attendant call buttons.
In the event of a water evacuation, please use that light vest underneath your seat. Remove that vest only and told to do so. Remove from the pouch, place the vest over your head. Wrap the strap around your waist, buckle in front, and pull to tighten it in. Thanks so much for your attention. Sit back, relax, enjoy this. I don't know. I'll figure it out in a minute, bunch. It's an hour and something? Were y'all paying attention? Did he tell you 2 hours? 2 hours. Okay, well, y'all are doing better than me. I just work here, I don't know. We'll be dimming the cabin lights momentarily. If you need any additional light, there's a reading light just above you. Welcome aboard.
Southwest is one of the few low-cost carriers out there offering complimentary in-flight Wi-Fi. While internet access is $8, you can still do so much else for free, like texting and viewing the in-flight map. The map is 3D and interactive with a variety of viewing options and also information about your destination and other Southwest destinations. Streaming entertainment like movies, live TV, etc. is also free, and there are countless options to choose from. After a pretty uneventful rest of the flight, it was soon time for the actual fun to begin. That was a joke, by the way. Today, O'Hare was running their east flow operations, and for arriving flights, that basically means you arrive from the west going towards the east. After descending over much of western Illinois and the western Chicago suburbs, we came in to land on runway 10 center. So service-wise, my experience with Southwest today was great. I really have no complaints with regards to the onboard amenities and service, and I definitely think that Southwest does a great job with the overall customer experience. So yes, I'll definitely fly them again in the future, but into O'Hare, well, I'll leave the rest of the video for you to decide. Okay, so here's the biggest issue with Southwest serving O'Hare. When Southwest applied for gate spaces at the airport, the only terminal with enough space was Terminal 5, the international terminal that's already super restricted and crowded. So when you have an airline like Southwest who wants nothing more than to expand, it got very bad very fast. As you can sort of tell here, there are 2 Southwest flights departing, with 3 Southwest flights that have landed and are waiting on a gate to open up. At once, you'll probably see 2 or 3 Southwest planes maximum lined up at Terminal 5. This terminal is so congested with other airlines that anything more than 2 or 3 Southwest planes is pretty rare. The good news is that Terminal 5 was just recently expanded, but even then that does very little to alleviate the growing pains that are affecting Southwest at this airport. After a solid 30 minutes of sitting on the taxiway, we finally began moving, but not to our gate as we had hoped. Turns out the Southwest flight occupying our gate was still not ready to go, and thus we taxied past Terminal 5, past the penalty box where another Southwest flight was waiting, and sat on the taxiway by runway 27 left for another 25 minutes. I guess the one good thing that came out of this was the plane spotting. Just as a quick refresher, we had landed at 4:37 p.m. Here we are finally taxiing to our gate at 5:53 p.m. after almost an hour and 20 minutes of waiting on the ground. This issue, sadly enough, is not a one-time occurrence. Southwest flights every single day face this problem at O'Hare, and it's primarily due to congestion and also lack of space at other terminals. The way I see it, Southwest bit off way more than they could chew at O'Hare, adding too many new routes with inadequate space to support their expansion. The only solution I see to this issue is that Southwest should definitely downsize heavily at O'Hare until the congestion is alleviated, and maybe keep 4 or 5 routes from here compared to the 12 they currently operate from here. So my final verdict on Southwest at O'Hare is that you shouldn't fly Southwest from or to Chicago O'Hare unless you have an insane amount of patience and are also willing to deal with minimum 1 to 2 hour delays. Thanks so much for sticking with me throughout this adventure. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. My journey home still doesn't end here, as I ended up spending the night in Chicago for reasons which you'll find out in a future Amtrak trip report coming up very soon. Until then, take care everyone, see you next time, and have a good one.